I'm so glad you were born safe and sound. I'm sorry I couldn't do anything.
That's not true at all. Just having you here is enough for me. Let's be happy together.
I felt extremely nauseous at her words, but I couldn't just leave like this. I finally reached for the door. I knocked lightly and opened it.
Hey, who do you think is the father of this child?
As I entered the hospital room, I reacted to Abby's words and looked up.
Huh? Who could it be? Someone we know. Right, Kate?
Nathan hurriedly interrupted our conversation with these words. Somehow both the imperious Abby and the flustered Nathan seemed ridiculous, and I spat out in disgust. Of course I know. Congratulations, I hope you're happy. Make that child happy together. Then I left Nathan behind and exited the hospital room. Surely divine retribution will fall upon them both. There's no future where they become happy after causing misery to others. I headed to a place to prepare a new future for them. My name is Kate Reynolds. I am a 37-year-old housewife. I was born and raised in a rural area. I have one younger sister. I grew up happily as the eldest daughter in a very ordinary family. After graduating from high school, I worked as an office worker at a local company. Not flashy, but I spent my days happily and seriously. And in the course of work, I was introduced to Nathan Reynolds, who would become my husband. Nathan was the son of the president of a client company. 3 years older than me, he seemed too good for someone like me. The executive who introduced me to Nathan told his father, the president,
Miss Kate is serious and precise in her work, and she's well liked by our clients for her kindness. If the executive who never praises anyone says so, she must be a wonderful lady.
My father-in-law Jason liked me from our first meeting, and so did Nathan, who came to like me, leading us to date and marry when I was 33 years old. I then retired from work to become a housewife. Everyone blessed me for this new beginning. However, there was one person who did not, my sister Abby. Abby is 10 years younger than me. My younger sister was the long-awaited second child, born after my mom underwent fertility treatments. Because of this, she was clearly loved and spoiled by our family. Of course, I also found Abby incredibly cute.
I want to eat pudding.
That's for your sister. You had some yesterday, didn't you?
It's okay. Let her have it. Thus, I often indulged her little whims from an early age. Consequently, Abby grew up to be the opposite of me, a skilled complainer, clearly expressing her opinions, both good and bad.
I hate hand-me-downs. They're ugly and I don't want to wear them.
In elementary school, she would refuse to wear the clothes I had outgrown, troubling our mother. Our family was not very wealthy, even by general standards. Even though I only wore hand-me-downs, I never complained, regardless of whether I liked them or not. Not that I thought Abby shouldn't complain, because I didn't, but learning to endure was also important, I believed. It's not ugly. Sure, it's a bit outdated, but the design is still wearable today. If I ever talked back, Abby would retort,
You don't realize it's ugly because you're out of style.
Indeed, I might not have been fashionable, but I treasured the new clothes I occasionally received, and my mother kept them clean and neat. Since I wasn't into flashy styles, my clothes were mostly basic items from unfashionable brands. I thought Abby could wear them just fine, but probably she just disliked the idea of wearing my hand-me-downs. Still, as sisters connected by blood, our tastes unknowingly seemed to align, as the things Abby would buy were often the same type and color as what I owned. Yet, because of Abby's cuteness, my parents and I ended up spoiling her. As she became a high school student, her whims became more and more unreasonable. She would demand pocket money, and if she wanted something, whether it was makeup or bags, she would buy it without hesitation. Every school was skipped if she didn't feel like attending, and she would go out at night whenever she wanted to play. By this time, not only did my parents indulge her, but they also scolded her on several occasions. We had to search for Abby in the middle of the night more than once or twice. Even if my parents refused to give her pocket money, she would sneak to our grandparents' house and coax some out of them unknowingly. No matter how much they lectured her or restricted her actions, Abby, who had always lived freely since childhood, did not change her ways.
It's my fault for spoiling Abby. What if she ends up dropping out due to truancy?
My mother felt responsible for Abby's actions, but Abby managed to graduate from high school and even secured a job. We were all relieved, but astonishingly, she quit the company after just 1 month.
"There's a stinky old man there,"
she said, offering a reason that hardly justified quitting. Afterward, she bounced between part-time jobs, quitting and starting new ones until she turned 23. Now an adult, Abby has settled down a bit in the past 2 years, working steadily as a part-timer. Perhaps she has learned a bit about personal responsibility as an adult. However, when I announced my marriage, she suddenly expressed a desire to quit her job.
"Isn't it fair that only you get to marry the son of a president and become a housewife?"
Ugh, I'm so jealous. That was Abby's first reaction when I shared the news of my marriage. Even as a housewife, I still have to do housework, and I plan to do simple company tasks at home without pay. Even when I explained this, the mere idea of quitting her job seemed to fill Abby with envy.
"Housework is done quickly, and company work only takes a few minutes, right?"
Even so, I can't just slack off.
That's right, and with your father-in-law being the company president, dealing with relatives must be tough, right? It seems like you'll hardly have any time to rest.
Mother took my side, but Abby wasn't convinced.
"That's just enduring until my in-laws are gone. Jason is old anyway, and in a few years, you'll be president's wife, right?"
What are you saying? I was severely displeased by Abby's words. Sensing my annoyance, Abby laughed loudly and said,
"Just kidding."
But I wasn't in the mood to laugh, and my parents were also stunned by her remark. Everyone thought it was too much of a joke, but after a while, Abby actually quit her job.
"I quit my job, so from tomorrow, I'll do the housework. Housewife."
She never even helped with chores at home, and now her sudden declaration had us all in a whirl. I was planning to get married and move out in a few months, but I felt terribly sorry for my parents, who would have to live with Abby. I can't believe she actually quit her job. When I lamented, my parents just gave a wry smile.
I thought she had calmed down, but Abby is still a child at heart. It's okay for now, but what is she planning to do as she gets older without a steady job?
Even if it's about personal responsibility, the parents must be worried.
Well, I just hope Abby doesn't cause trouble for Kate. Right, you mustn't let Abby disturb your happiness.
In the end, I got married and left home without being able to do anything about the eager housewife Abby had become. Consequently, I was constantly worried about my family after my marriage. My in-laws were kind, and there was no inconvenience in our life, but as expected, being a housewife was challenging, with duties extending beyond household chores to preparing gifts for business associates and dealing with relatives. Although we lived separately, my mother-in-law Molly would often come to teach me how to manage our home, saying,
"It must be hard marrying into such a family,"
showing concern for me. No.
"I understand it's hard because I went through it too, but let's take it easy and not push ourselves too hard. If we try too hard, we'll run out of breath."
With a smile, Molly taught me various things. There's a lot expected from me being their daughter-in-law, including interactions with my in-laws. Some friends said, "It sounds tough," but Molly always cared for me and even prepared meals while I was busy learning the ropes. I was deeply moved by how fortunate I was to have such wonderful in-laws.
Both Dad and Mom are really happy that you became my wife.
Nathan also said that. Slowly, I was becoming integrated into the family as a daughter-in-law. And 2 years after our marriage, I became pregnant with our first child. My in-laws were overjoyed. Nathan also seemed to look forward to the child's birth. However, contrary to this happiness, I had some concerns. It was about Nathan's suspicious behavior. He started taking his smartphone to the bathroom and had increasingly frequent visits entertaining, and recently the time he spent with me had decreased. Noticing that he was home less often, I became worried about his fatigue and once mentioned, "You seem busy lately."
I'll be president soon. The constant calls and appointments are troubling.
However, Nathan responded as I expected and went back to his smartphone. Since becoming pregnant, I gradually felt more anxious about not having Nathan around. One day I suddenly thought that Nathan might be cheating. It happened when I looked at Nathan, who was always on his smartphone. His face seemed too happy for our work call. I felt uneasy seeing that expression.
I got a sudden call. I have to go out.
Sure enough, right after that expression, Nathan spoke to me. "What? Now?"
That president always calls suddenly. You can go to sleep.
Leaving these words behind, Nathan rushed out of the house. I thought it was unbelievable. What kind of emergency could there be at this hour? Waking up to the reality of a husband leaving his pregnant wife alone at night, I decided to hire a detective for the sake of our unborn child. A while after that, I received a call from my parents.
Abby has been taken to the hospital. Come quickly.
I was shocked by the call. Abby had been taken to the gynecology department, so I rushed to the hospital, thinking she might have an ovarian torsion. Is Abby's examination over? Is she okay? At the hospital, I found my parents in the waiting room and approached them.
Turns out she's pregnant. She's starting to go into labor.
What? I couldn't help but raise my voice at my mother's words. Didn't you notice before?
It seems Abby had regular checkups, but we didn't hear anything. I didn't notice much since I didn't show much during pregnancy either, and neither did Abby.
I instinctively touched my own stomach. Certainly, I'm not the type whose pregnancy is noticeable, but is it possible for one to go unnoticed by others until the due month? It's too late to say anything now, but soon after I heard the healthy cry of a newborn. My relief was short-lived as a new problem emerged: how to raise the child. Abby, an unmarried self-proclaimed housewife who isn't working, and the identity of the father was unknown. However, it wasn't the time to bring up such matters just after Abby had given birth. So after seeing the newborn's face, I went home. Abby had a baby. I told this to Nathan when I got home.
Is that so? Abby is a mom now?
Nathan seemed surprised, but smiled happily.
Can I go see them?
How about we go together this weekend? I only saw the baby's face today, so I'm planning to visit again properly.
That sounds good. I'll try to adjust my work schedule.
Nathan said this and immediately started fiddling with his smartphone. All his talk about adjusting work seemed like a lie, but I hoped that seeing Abby's child might bring about a change in him. That weekend, Nathan and I headed to the hospital where Abby was admitted. Just as we were about to enter the hospital, my phone rang. It was from the detective agency. It wasn't good to answer the phone while Nathan was with me. I hesitated for a moment, and Nathan spoke up.
Is that a call? Can I go ahead?
He seemed eager to see the baby, and I felt relieved. Yeah, I think the call will be quick, so I'll follow you soon. After saying this, I parted with Nathan and answered the phone. The call ended, and I headed to the hospital room with a heavy heart. Then, I heard voices from inside.
I'm so glad you were born safe and sound. I'm sorry I couldn't do anything.
That's not true at all. Just having you here is enough for me. Let's win happiness together.
Having just had that phone call, her words made me feel extremely nauseous. But I couldn't just leave like that. Bracing myself, I touched the door, knocked lightly, and opened it. Abby, how are you feeling?
And big sister, you came.
Of course. Nathan was holding the baby and looked happy.
I had a baby first, huh? He's healthy and cute, right? I wonder what your child will be like.
Indeed. Abby seemed to want to boast. I was annoyed by her tone, but responded briefly to avoid provocation. Then, perhaps frustrated that I didn't react poorly, Abby spoke more forcefully.
Hey, who do you think is the father of this child?
I reacted to her words and looked up.
Huh? Who could it be? Someone we know? Right, Kate?
Nathan hurriedly joined our conversation. Somehow, both Abby's bossiness and Nathan's fluster seemed ridiculous, and I spat out in disgust. Of course I know. Congratulations, be happy. Make sure you both make that child happy.
Kate?
I'm going home now.
You're leaving already? Wait.
As Nathan hurriedly placed the baby back on the bed and tried to follow me, Abby stopped him.
Well, if you already knew, then that's quick. Good for you, Nathan.
I am?
Nathan fumbled, held back by Abby's grip on his shoulders. Leaving him behind, I left the hospital room and headed straight to the detective agency. The call had been to inform me that they had gathered evidence. The detective hesitantly told me something even harder to say.
Actually, we've seen a woman who is familiar with the obstetrics clinic, located around 10 minutes west of your home, attending appointments with Nathan.
It was indeed the clinic where Abby had given birth. Although I had suspected, given Abby's history of coveting what was mine, the recent conversation confirmed it. Without a doubt, Nathan had been having an affair with Abby. After receiving the evidence from the detective office, I went to my in-laws' house. Nathan has had a child.
Had a child? What do you mean? It's not time for our grandchild to be born, right?
My in-laws looked puzzled by my words. Yes, it's not my child. Please look at this. I presented the evidence received from the detective office. As my in-laws examined it, their faces gradually paled. After realizing everything, they were apologetic.
I can't believe this is happening.
She was crying, almost banging her head on the floor. Mother, please lift your head. I'm not asking for an apology from you two, but I cannot forgive Nathan. I think I will be filing for divorce.
That's understandable. A wonderful woman like you should not be saddened, and honestly, we cannot forgive him either. We're truly sorry. We will do whatever we can to help you.
Thank you. I felt profoundly grateful that my in-laws were understanding. The divorce seemed likely to proceed smoothly. After our conversation, their anger was directed towards Nathan.
What was Nathan thinking? Doing something like this? I'm going to call him right now.
As Jason said this, he immediately started dialing Nathan's number. The moment the call connected, he shouted angrily.
I've heard everything from Abby. What is this all about? Come here and explain yourself. It's a misunderstanding. Listen to me.
Nathan sounded frantic on the other end of the phone. His voice leaked from the smartphone in such a pathetic way that I couldn't help but smirk, though my in-laws were not amused.
All right, I'll hear everything, but come here quickly. I'm sorry, I'll come right away.
His voice sounded almost tearful, like a child being scolded. Imagining his expression, I chuckled to myself. Not wanting to face Nathan, I went home after that. Once home, I immediately began packing. The house was a wedding gift from Jason, and Molly had furnished it for me. I was getting divorced and moving out, but I didn't want Abby to take over the gifts from my in-laws. When I shared my feelings with them, they said,
Of course, we gave you that house and furniture because they were for you, Kate.
But I understand if you don't want to live there. I have an apartment closer to the station. You should move there for now.
Thank you. With the help of my in-laws, I quickly arranged for a moving company and relocated. It seemed Nathan was being forced to reflect on his actions at his parents' home and wasn't allowed to go to work. Molly kept me updated on his situation. About a week later, I finally received a call from Nathan.
Kate, I finally got a chance to call. Mom took away my smartphone. What do you mean by getting a divorce?
What do you mean, what? You have a child with another woman. How can we possibly continue our marriage?
It was just a fling with Abby. I didn't think she would get pregnant. Anyway, I'm on my way home now. Let's talk. Please, don't leave. Stay there.
Nathan hurriedly hung up after speaking, but I laughed to myself. I had already moved out. Which home was he heading to? Predictably, I received another call from Nathan a few minutes later.
What's going on? Why is there no house?
I couldn't help but laugh at his bewildered voice. I've already sold the house. And the new owner plans to turn it into a parking lot.
How can you just do that? That house is in my father's name.
Of course, I got permission. That day when you came home, I also disposed of your belongings. So your house doesn't exist anymore. Just go back to your parents' house. After my move, Jason sold the house. I was grateful to him for going to such lengths. And as I told Nathan, the new owner was indeed planning to turn the site into a parking lot, and the house had been demolished a few days later. I even went to see it. I thought I might feel a bit sad, but watching the house being torn down felt cleansing.
So, can we really never go back?
He must have been standing on the now empty lot. His voice was weak and desperate. He was such a bad finisher, always pleading. If he regretted it so much, he shouldn't have cheated me in the first place. Stop being so persistent. Just reflect on it at your parents' home. Nathan probably ran away from his parents' scolding, but now he had nowhere else to find peace. He had destroyed that himself. That night, my parents also contacted me.
Abby is saying that Nathan is the father of her baby. That must be a mistake, right?
Apparently, Abby had been claiming this since her discharge from the hospital, but my parents had ignored it, thinking it impossible. However, since she hadn't stopped insisting for several days, my mother, now seriously doubting, contacted me. I'm sorry to ask this, but it's true. I'm planning to divorce Nathan.
Oh, that's terrible.
I've informed Nathan's parents and they're helping me prepare a new place. We're going to discuss the divorce. My mother seemed to be crying on the other side of the phone. Abby was apologizing repeatedly, and I felt tears welling up as well. My mother had no reason to apologize. It was Abby's actions that she felt responsible for. Despite being an adult, Abby probably can't imagine that her actions are causing sadness to those around her. Mother, don't worry about anything. After reassuring my parents, I ended the call. Then, with my in-laws present, I began the divorce discussions.
It was my fault. I got carried away by Abby's temptation.
Nathan seemed reluctant to divorce, apologizing repeatedly, but his words did not move me. If you feel sorry, will you marry Abby?
But
she's had the baby. Abby can't raise it alone. Take responsibility. Nathan was silenced by my words. Jason sighed deeply.
We will support Kate and the child that's been born. You take responsibility and fulfill your duties to Kate's sister and the child.
Under pressure from both me and his father, Nathan reluctantly signed the divorce papers. I hoped he would reflect on how his actions had led to this outcome. After our divorce, Nathan remarried Abby and started living with his parents. Having no house left, he had no choice but to live with them. By the time I was nearing the end of my pregnancy, I was living comfortably in the home prepared by my in-laws.
Sorry for stealing Nathan from you.
Abby sent me that message, but I ignored it. Dealing with Abby now could stress me out, which would be bad for my health. But probably that's exactly what she wanted.
Guess what kind of kid your sister will have? It's funny because they will be cousins, but almost like siblings. Well, I'm younger and prettier, so my child will surely be better.
She kept sending messages like this, completely disregarding others' feelings.
By the way, I haven't received a baby gift from you.
Even more so, she had the nerve to say that to me, knowing I was going to be a single mother, which really got on my nerves. Are you home right now? I'll come over right away. Despite having ignored her until now, I replied to her message about the baby gift and headed to Nathan's house right away. Kate, how are you feeling? Molly had continued to care for me warmly even after the divorce. She welcomed me warmly into the house that day. Is Abby here?
Nathan is off today too, so they're probably here.
Molly hesitated a bit, careful with her words. I smiled and said, Great, I brought a baby gift for Abby and Nathan. Once inside, I sat in the living room while Molly called Abby over. Abby, holding the baby and looking blissful, laughed at me mockingly, unaware that she was about to be cast down into turmoil.
You finally brought the baby gift. Well, I'm not short on money.
To Abby, who had made such a remark, I handed a thick envelope. It was bulky, but something you'd expect to contain cash, making Abby frown in confusion.
What is this?
I wasn't going to give this, but this is my gift to you. As I gently handed the baby to Nathan and passed the envelope to her, Abby's face turned pale as she looked through the papers and sighed.
What is this? What does this mean?
She then screamed loudly, glaring at Nathan. Nathan peered curiously at the documents Abby was holding, and turned pale as well.
I don't know anything about this. It wasn't me.
It's obviously you, Nathan.
I couldn't help but smile at their exchange. The envelope actually contained investigation documents from a detective. I had shown them to my in-laws already, but they contained shocking truths unknown to Abby. It turned out that Nathan's affairs weren't just with Abby. He had 4 mistresses in total. Abby was the third in line. The first affair appears to have been a double affair with a subordinate's wife, whom Nathan was seriously involved with. According to Molly, the husband eventually found out, and the marriage to Abby was the catalyst that finally ended it. The second was a 20-year-old girl he met on an app, not Abby. He was seen entering the obstetrics clinic with her, apparently for an abortion, according to the detective. The third was Abby. The fourth was one of Abby's friends, who she had introduced to Nathan. I knew all this, but to me, Nathan was now a stranger. Having any relationship with multiple women was bad enough, but involving my sister made it unforgivable. I would have buried this dark secret if Abby had sincerely apologized and refrained from trying to one-up me. However, since she couldn't stop, I decided to knock her off her pedestal.
This is terrible. You liar!
As expected, Abby began crying and lashing out in hysterics. Despite holding her adorable child, she repeatedly cursed and lunged at Nathan.
What is all this noise about?
Just then, Jason returned home. He seemed a bit pleased to see me and said,
Kate, you're here.
Then he glared at Abby and Nathan.
What are you two doing shouting in front of the baby?
Jason, listen, Nathan has...
Oh, if it's about Nathan, they both already know everything you're going to say. I grinned at the panicking Abby.
That thing.
He spoke with a look of disbelief.
After all, Abby, it was before your marriage, and you're just the same. You were complicit in the affair, so do you even have the right to blame Nathan?
I think only Kate has the right to blame Nathan.
Abby bit her lip in frustration as her own parents didn't take her side.
Also, I've prepared a new house for the three of you to live in.
What?
Abby's eyes briefly lit up at the father-in-law's words, despite her furious state.
I negotiated the rent down to $800 a month. It's a friend's company, so they cut down $30 for us. Please move out quickly.
At those words, Abby's face fell into despair again.
Wait, what do you mean move out? And why do Kate get a new house, while we get a rental, with rent to pay? I've also prepared a new job for you. It's in sales at a real estate company.
A new job?
Are you kicking me out of the company? I was supposed to be the next president.
The couple then confronted the father-in-law, but he smiled and said,
When did I ever say you were going to be the next president? You just assumed that. Besides, I can't keep someone in the company who has affairs with employees' families. Pack your things quickly.
The couple who had been arguing now united in their protest against Jason. I watched in disbelief, but Molly murmured beside me,
Ever since Kate and Nathan divorced, the father planned to kick him out. Both the father and I think of Kate as our true family.
I was overjoyed by her words, and I silently laughed at the divine retribution my sister and her husband were facing. They moved into the house Jason had prepared for them. It was a 15-minute walk from the station. However, it was next to a pediatric clinic and only a 3-minute walk to the supermarket, ideal for raising children. My parents told me Abby was complaining about not being able to go out, but she would surely spend recklessly if given the chance. I hope she tries her best in parenting in the house Jason found for the sake of their grandchild. Nathan was under Abby's thumb, working uncomfortably in sales at a real estate company, which, ironically, was managed by a relative of the subordinate he had an affair with. Whether the company knows about Nathan's misconduct or not, he must feel quite constrained there. Moreover, with the compensation payments, Abby couldn't live the lavish life she desired. It was a life neither Abby nor Nathan could have imagined, but it was the situation they had brought upon themselves. Above all, I hope they make their child's happiness a priority. After that, I gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Both my parents and in-laws adore him. Though my bond with my in-laws was severed, I still lived in that apartment, keeping in touch. I worked remotely for Jason's company, which had previously been unpaid. Now employed there, I earned enough to raise my child on my own. I might have been plain, but I've always valued people and acted with integrity, and I believe that's why I ended up where I am. Though I wasn't lucky with my husband, I was blessed with a very cute son. I am truly grateful for the opportunity to work from home while raising him.